Hi, welcome back. And today we'll analyze uh, extractive, the difference between extractive and inclusive models, right? So, as you know, there is a whole theory that it started with a publication called "Why Nations Fail." I went to the discussion of when the book was just released. I remember, and it had a lot of impact because in terms of development, this hypothesis lies on the fact that the countries that have developed the most are those that have, for some reason, developed inclusive institutions. So our inclusive institutions are the ones that have helped democracies and market-driven countries and communities to to achieve a higher level of sustainability and of income creation, wealth creation, and even income distribution. So, analyzing this, there was a conversation about strategy and leadership and how much or which one of the two is more important. And here is where you should try to apply this inclusive or non-extractive model, because usually when you go for one of the different options, either or, you end up with a lower value. Look at the example here. If we have a low strategy level but high leadership level, the outcome is number one, low. If you have a medium of strategy, so you would say 50% of the objectives were achieved for strategy and 50% of the objectives were achieved for leadership, right? Or the leadership objectives, right? 50-50. Then you have a higher degree. That's X2. And then if each one of those, instead of either or, is an and you have leadership and strategy, both, you end up with X3 at the highest level of sustainability. So this goes to show that instead of either or instead of the opposite, I explain this in my book, Partnerships and Networks, because a lot of these theories were developed also based on studies on biology, and Fricio Capra are some of the authors, and then Umberto Maturana created a new concept about, that it has expanded from biology to other sectors of knowledge. So a lot of these ideas were thought of basically, and you can check some of these concepts here in my book, Partnerships and Networks. You can download it. It's an ebook. You can go to my webpage and download it from there. So, as I said, in this case, they use this model in order to analyze. This is Harvard Business Review that uses the model in order to analyze successful partnerships. And here's again, that was the conclusion. Successful partnerships achieve the best results and most impact when both altruistic and utilitarian drivers both of them reach their highest levels. So there it goes to show that it's not either or, but and. So in this case, it would be, if you have either strategy or leadership, is lower the impact than if you have strategy and leadership. So that would be the lesson learned that I would say about this model. If you apply this in the book Why Nations Fail, they apply this to institutions. So for instance, institutions that only have representation of one side, well, and that's governance, usually end up with laws and legislations and impacts that are not inclusive because they don't have the other representation. For instance, in a lot of the coastal communities with fishing and overfishing has affected and it has impact their community and the work, etc., it's because there's only one representation. There isn't representation, for instance, from biological or research centers. So usually in that model, it goes back to mercantilism, where it was thought that if you only exported and not imported, it was better for your country. But we all know what that happens, because when you just bring income, well, your lifestyle becomes more expensive, and eventually you can't really export to the other country. So that's a limited vision. So I would say that in terms of non-extractive, inclusive markets, institutions, ideas, concepts, we should look at this and see that trying to, now, it's more complex, of course it is, like in a partnership. But as we had discussed, when you go to phase 3 of our strategy model and you go into partnership, the impact is the greatest. So you lose control. Some of your ideas are not going to be there in the final draft, but you gain impact. So you have to choose. So inclusive institutions, inclusive, for instance, in this case, if a company would say, oh, I'm just concerned about strategy and not leadership, it's not going to work. And if they would say, oh, I'm only concentrating on leadership and not strategy, that's not going to work either. It has to be both. And it makes it a little more complex. It makes it a little slower. That's why the better and the more clarity that I have about my objective, the better you can use. But as a basic concept, non-extractive and inclusive models rely on this added value by the execution of drivers that represent not one but 2 or more sectors or priorities that you have developed. So try to apply it whenever you have that kind of opinions in your board or in your company, etc. Try to apply this concept. It'll help you. Non-extractive, inclusive models. Okay, I hope it helps you. Thank you.